What's up, everyone? Um, Hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone's staying safe. Let me see. So I wanted to get online to have a little conversation, uh, kind of about what's happening right now with the protests, with killing of George Floyd, and anyways, let me get my friend on here. Here we go. Yo,
Yeah, yo.
what's happening, man?
What's cracking, man? How you doing?
Good, good. Oh, you got that. You got the God light in the back.
Oh, come on, man. You know how to do it. You know how to do it.
um, for everyone who doesn't know, this is my friend Lorde Sanctus, aka Official, aka
Yeah.
Harold. We've we I grew up in we grew up in a little town called. You grew up in Napomo. I grew up in Grover Beach, which is 5 cities, like slow town. If anyone knows Central Coast, um, that's where I went to elementary school all the way up until high school, and that's sometimes in bios in my bio, sometimes it gets left out in the sense that people don't know what so I have to like explain it, which but we met in third grade, and it was you're basically my first friend when I moved to America.
You were definitely in my first three friends. I don't know what order it happened, but I know you're in the first three friends in my life that I made for sure.
That I actually like played and go went to went over to like each other's houses and like actually
Hmm.
spoke on the phone and stuff.
And I
Um,
will say you're the first friend for sure. You're either it was either you or Marcus Boykin that I met, the first friend I had outside of church. I don't know which one.
oh really?
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so I wanted to get on live, just kind of talk about obviously what's happening right now. And I think I think for a lot of people, um, including myself, like I have uh, seen and learned a lot about Black culture through you and and a lot of friends throughout kind of uh, my life, especially it's in Central Coast, which is like Black population is very small,
Right.
along with like the Asian American or Asians in general in Central Coast. It's predominantly white, uh,
Hmm.
and um, I think a lot of things I learned from uh, from stuff that you introduced me to, whether it be hip hop culture, whether it be uh, from films and even dance was a big part for me, and to realize that how much I've absorbed and learned uh, from Black culture, it starts to really kind of blow my mind. You don't think about the things kind of you learn; you just absorb it as a kid, right?
Hmm.
And then to now, I think for it hit really hard when all these killings started to happen. You start to realize like, oh, I've seen this so many times, but it's like, what can you do, right? What
Right.
can you do? So like for you being in like Central Coast, like how we never even really got to talk about those things. I'd hear tidbits and here and there, and I'd have some sort of empathy for the fact that I've gone through a little tidbit of what you have gone through, and that's not even close to saying that that's equal or a full understanding of the racial discrimination that you kind of endured through your childhood until now.
I mean, It's interesting. My perspective is a little different than most of Black people, I feel like, because I was raised as I wasn't raised to look at myself as a Black person. I was just raised to look at myself as a person. You know what I'm saying? So growing up, I didn't realize when people had a problem with me. I never equated it to race because I was just taught to not do that and kind of dismiss that behavior. So I didn't pick up on that stuff way till way later in life. I actually could say, like, I can honestly say that growing up, I probably thought I had white privilege just because I grew up around white people, not understanding, how they saw me until honestly my interactions with the police as an adult. Then I started to see, like, oh, okay, I'm not being treated like they're being treated. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't really like that. But I can, what's really honest, and we've never had this conversation, but I vividly remember anytime, anytime someone said anything derogatory towards Asians in your vicinity, how livid you would get and how instantly you would stand up and be like, I don't like our whole group, everybody around us knew, like, Harry doesn't play with that. You don't say that. You don't say anything disrespectful towards Asian culture. And I never did say anything disrespectful to, or tried not to. But I never understood that sense of pride you had because again, I was just looking at myself as just a person. I wasn't looking at myself as a Black person. And then down the years, like as I started to be treated differently and noticed being treated differently and things like that, I would always look back to those moments when you would turn up on people and be like, that's why he wouldn't allow people to disrespect him or his culture like that. You know what I'm saying? Because I wasn't taught that. That's something I had to learn myself. So I kind of learned that from you, bro. I'm gonna keep it real.
Oh man, no, I mean, dude, like I am thankful for you for you were like one of the first people that I mean one of my first friends, but like one of my friends that I saw that was just so clear on whether you felt that or not, but what it looked like from the outside was like you knew who you were and you knew what you wanted to do, and believe it or not, you know you were the first person that like kind of really truly introduced me to dance, really. you know
Wow,
and
that's
you know,
crazy.
he's a great dancer. He's a rapper, wonderful rapper. And
I don't
really
dance no.
great,
I'm too old to dance now. The
but
joints is
but
bad.
dance wise, we do these things like called mock rock, where we would lip sync. It's like what is that? The lip sync. What's that
Yeah,
lip sync?
lip sync. Yeah, you just let karaoke kind of sing other
Karaoke,
people's
whatever.
songs.
And we perform and like we'd be on stage and performing like Genuine and like Cisco and all that stuff. But we predating ourselves. But yeah. But but I learned a lot about kind of what it was to feel to be different and to I think when those moments when I did like kind of I think it was more insecurity and really feeling like I didn't know how to else to express it because it just felt bad and I would whether I'd have a bad temper that would just come out that way.
Right.
And I think throughout the time throughout like my childhood I just even seeing like injustices like even with with anyone, whether it be my Mexican friends or Black friends or even like Asian friends, it would be to a point where like you'd speak up to the point where until you're outnumbered.
Right.
It,
Right.
it's a fear of like your parents. My parents taught me is like yo don't make trouble and don't just put your head down and why get hurt over something like this.
Right.
Um, which brings me to kind of like talk about like that's for Asian American at least culture it's or Asian culture
Hmm.
it's been that it's like mind your own business, right? Like don't
Right.
if the Black community is going through some stuff like
That's
that's
not your battle.
that's not
Right.
your battle. And um, what I through like research and doing history and over time just reading books and uh, starting to see the origins of that, right, of what the
Hmm.
were. And do you like do you know do you know the history behind of like why this kind of a wedge was placed between specifically I think uh, Asian Asians and blacks, like Asian Americans and African Americans? Like, you,
I mean,
I
I
know you've
don't.
experienced it from the Asian side, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I mean, honestly, but it was only when we moved to the Bay. Like that's the only time is when we moved to the Bay and we were trying to find a place. And ultimately, you ended up living in Daly City, and I then ended up living with my aunt. And I'll never forget this because, again, like I grew up just thinking I never really saw my race until actually that was the first moment when I remember us having a conversation. We were outside of a Ralph's or a Vaughn's in Daly City or something, and we had just applied for this apartment. And you spoke to this lady in Chinese. You had called her, and she said the apartment was available. We got there, and she saw me with you, and you guys spoke to her in Chinese, and she said the apartment wasn't available, and she basically told you because I was with you that she didn't want to rent the apartment to us. And you had just said like you were real cool about it, but you were like, yo, that's just kind of how older Chinese people are. That just it's just they come from a different time. And at the time I had heard that from so many people. Like I've heard that from Lucas and his like I've been over Lucas's house and like people at his house have said crazy racist jokes to me, and the only excuse that they could say is they come from a different time. Or I've been with Terrence, and Terrence is with his ex-girlfriends at their house, and their grandpa says something racist, and all their excuses they come from a different time. And I was willing to accept that back then, but I realized that us saying that people come from a different time is what led us to this time.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what led us to this right here, because we just let people slide by. Even my grandpa, when he would say things about white people that I didn't agree with, I didn't say anything. I didn't correct him. You know what I'm saying? I just let him say it. And I understood his frustration, but even my mouth was shut then. And I feel like all those times we let those things pass has led us to this time right now. And it's time to pick a side. And it's time to kind of decide, are you going to speak up, or are you going to let it keep happening? Are you going to be a catalyst for change, or are you going to sit on the sidelines and just see what happens?
yeah. I mean, I agree with that, and I'm sorry. And I know we've had this conversation before. Like, it sucks because it feels like I have to like apologize for like the community.
And you don't
No,
you
no, no.
I yeah.
But it's but that's I think the hard part, right, about this conversation. Sometimes it's like you are proud of your culture and your community, but you also have to, as much as you want to uh, have that hold that bag of and be proud of all the things that the accomplishments of the community. You also
Absolutely.
have that baggage that with all the bad and the negative, and it's it's difficult to kind of uh, use that as something where you're always going to feel like, oh, if I say this, then they're going to hit me with that, because the what the previous kind of generation has really not made progress in the sense of like finding information, looking into history, and realizing these patterns that start to happen and why
Hmm.
you feel a certain way, right?
But you
And
really have to think about
that
it
like
too,
we're
like
young, how do we know? Like, how do we know what to say to that, right?
yeah, and like your parents, my parents, they were, if you look at all the curriculum they learned from and all the media that they ingested, they were programmed to just be obedient, an obedient workforce. That's what especially if your parents were in the military. But even if your parents weren't in the military, they're programmed to be a good citizen, get a job, don't cause no trouble. You know what I'm saying? And don't make the white man uncomfortable. And that's one thing like we can understand. Even you're not black, I'm not Asian, but like I do know, like you said at the very beginning of this conversation, you were told to stay out of the way, don't make any trouble, and that ultimately translates to don't make the white man uncomfortable,
No,
especially if you're living in a white town. You know what I'm saying? And that's where we have to kind of deprogram ourselves and say, hey, I can't not be from San Luis Obispo. You feel what I'm saying? Just because that makes a white person uncomfortable, I don't know what to do about that. So you're just gonna have to learn how to be comfortable with that. Because I'm from here. Like you can tell me to go back where I'm from here, I'm gonna end up in slow. You feel what I'm saying? I'm not gonna end up in
go
Africa.
backwards. Go backwards.
Yeah, yeah. Like
Right.
if there was a teleportation machine, I would end up in 805. I wouldn't end up in Africa. I've never been to Africa, so that's just what it is. But I just think that it is up to having conversations like this in public forums so people can see and hear that there really is no difference, regardless of the upbringing, regardless of the belief systems, regardless of the politics. There's no difference between us on a human level. You know what I'm saying?
No, it's crazy because you hit it right on the nail. Like you nailed it with talking about how it's making the establishment comfortable. You know, the majority, which is not it's not going to be majority for long. The I don't know if a lot of people know this, but you know, anti-blackness obviously has is still around and been around, and obviously with if if you even have like an understanding of what America is, you know, it was built on slavery basically, you know, and the crazy thing is when the new information that I found out. I mean, I knew a lot of about um, the obviously everyone knows about the civil rights movement, and then even a lot of people don't know the Chinese Exclusion Act, which happened in 1882,
Yeah.
where art Asian, or specifically people from China, and and then it spread to Asia to come into America, and it didn't really they didn't abolish it until like 1965. And what's interesting is 1964 is the Civil Rights Act, and a year shortly after the Immigration Act, which then opened up after the Civil Rights Movement, and
Yeah.
you know, you know, schools desegregated and all that. That's when we were able to Asian Americans or become Asian Americans. They're allowing uh, um, people from Asian countries with special skills. So it wasn't even a full thing. Special skills
Hmm.
to come. But the thing that's crazy to me, and I urge this for anyone in the Asian American community who's like listening, is that when they say this is not our fight, like why are we don't need to participate. But the fact is, a lot of people don't know that the model minority of Asians, of how we got that kind of stereotype, was like, you know, you put your head down, do good work, and it was from the establishment trying to pit any other group against blacks and it was basically anti-blackness, who was saying like,
Hmm.
look at these Asian people, they're foreigners, they're different than us, but they're doing so well. They put their head down, they you know, they have families,
Yeah.
they're
But let's all the while not acknowledging that just years previously, other Asians watched America round Asians up when Pearl Harbor happened. You feel what I'm saying? So, like, they completely disregarded that fact that Asians were being good citizens because they saw you round them up and put them into camps. So they know they're not going to act up.
but they use that against, like, look, they were put through this thing, look how quickly they bounced back, not
Hmm.
realizing, and using them as props basically, not realizing, you know, like the effects of slavery and segregation and discrimination, and just, you know, the innocent killing of black men and women, like not realizing what happened that didn't allow a community to even like thrive, or even to even own land, you know, just
Hmm.
so many things. And the reason I think the whole model minority had happened is just because the establishment and the white majority like was less racist towards Asian Americans. Not to say that they weren't, but they were just,
Right. They
and
tolerated y'all more.
yeah, and it put like a wedge between Asian Americans and African Americans, and it became like, oh well, they can keep fighting each other and they can kind of hate each other and not support each other for it because they're like, where we have this ability to come up from nothing, and it's like it's not the same. It's completely different.
But I also think on a fundamental level, just like on an immigration level, when because my girl's not Asian, she's Armenian. But I think that when you're on the outside of America looking in, what and you're trying to migrate here, you see how blacks are treated, and so you just say, "Hey, stay away from that." You know
Don't
what I'm saying?
like
Like, I don't want no part. I don't want no part of that. And like, so you hear so many people from outside of the country just say that blacks are inherently bad or whatever they need to tell their kids to make sure that their kids don't associate with them. And I think it's just on a level they just want their people to be safe because they know that we're not safe. But that speaks volumes. That should tell you everything, that everybody around the world knows that we're targets and they don't want their kids to stand next to us. You feel what I'm saying? Because I can't tell you how many people I've heard that have moved here from other countries and their parents told them to stay away from black people.
yeah, that's fuck, man. That's real. That's very real. I mean, you're just speaking the truth here because what you're saying is also, if you act what their idea of being American is, basically closer to white,
Mm-hmm.
and so with other certain cultures that immigrants, whatever, that move here, they like bleach their kids' skin to just get closer to not being associated with black,
Mm-hmm.
being anything close
Yeah.
to they've kind of villainized through media and through propaganda and whatnot. So like it's it's just so
Like
much.
I've literally seen people whose parents are like first generation immigrants, like be more mad at their kids for being rappers than porn stars because rappers have to be around black people at all times and porn stars don't. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's not to judge either profession, but
Yeah,
that's just that should tell you something. It's not a moral decision where people try to shroud it in morality, like black people are bad and they're not. What it is they say that, but they really know that you're not safe being around us. If you run into the law, if you run into a lot of different situations, you're not safe being around us. And so instead of just saying that, they'll say that we're bad and we're the problem, and that's what it comes down to.
yeah, it's just nuts, right? That this information existed, right? Information has existed. Obviously, it's not taught in schools, and that is a big problem in it because I don't think the teachers were even equipped to teach something like this. Obviously, it's not even in a textbook. So how can, and if teachers do teach it, they get reprimanded and told, and it's not, stay on course because what America was built on is just how to have,
Capitalism.
well, capitalism, but in order for capitalism, which is what is the emergence of it, right? And before
Mhm.
is, or at least what got them to that place to be able to even have um, be capitalist is the fact it was built on free labor,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
to be able to have the amount of money to do what has been done and to have America kind of thrive off the backs of slavery. But I mean, like, it's always hard. Like, how do you feel like when people do talk about, like, well, and I know the answer to this, but I want to hear from your perspective of, like, slavery happened 400 years ago. Like, right, all those rights have been given now, and obviously we see that's not true. But like,
Mhm.
what do you say to people like that? Because I think the conversation that we're having right now is important because some people don't know what to say. Some people don't know how to respond to those things, and when people throw that at them or try and downplay it all.
Well, I'll say a couple things. First of all, when when if you are in a discussion about racism and it's making you uncomfortable, it's okay to not say nothing. It's okay to just be quiet and you don't have to respond. The problem comes in when you immediately let your emotions take over and you feel personally attacked, so you try to defend yourself as if someone's saying that you have committed an act of racism when we're just talking about what's happened historically. You know what I'm saying? So, as a white person or as a non black person who feels a certain type of way when these discussions are brought up, I would encourage you to practice listening, to practice just not saying anything, nodding your head, and accepting what's being said. Because I mean, millions of black people across the nation saying the same thing. It can't be a lie. You feel what I'm saying? But also beyond that, you have to step back and look at the macro, look at the bigger picture, and it really comes down to like once. So slavery, like you said, it was free labor. That's how we built the economy that we have now. That's I mean, that's how we basically built this capitalist empire. And so once the blacks were freed, the people that had the most money at the time who built our economy said, how can we keep this machine going? And they created the industrial prison complex. So now we have whites, Asians, Mexicans, blacks all working for free. They all in jail make products for Macy's, they make products for these corporations, and it's free labor. It hasn't changed. Just now, all y'all are niggas. I don't if even if you're black or if you're not, you're a nigga. If you're in prison, that's just what it comes down to, and you're a slave. So we have to step back and look at this economy that everybody's trying to get us to rush back to during this pandemic, and saying sacrifice your life for this economy because they look at you as a slave in this cog. You feel what I'm saying? I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist. I'm just looking. We have 100,000, over 100,000 people dead from COVID-19, and yet the only concern of people is to get back to work, and I understand people are hurting, people need money, but it's not the people it's not just the people that need money that are hurting, that are saying let's get back to work. It's the people in power saying get back to work and make us money, while they bail out their friends at 4.5 trillion. They give away 4.5 trillion dollars to the people that need it the least, and they give us a one-time $1,200 check. They're telling us get back to work and make us money. So it's not just about now we're all very, very much in the same boat. But again, generations before us have been trained to believe that, oh, only these people can be affected by the laws because they don't follow the rules, all the while they're being sucked into the machine. So there's no difference between brown, black, and Asian. And black people, we got it first. But if you're not white, know that you're next. Period. So you need to stand up for black lives, because once they get us, once they silence all of us, you're next. And then once the Asians are gone, then the Latins are next. And then once the Latins are gone, then the Armenians are next. And it's going to go down the line. So we have to stop it from the jump.
Wow. I mean, yeah, it's it's crazy when you talk about looking at the macro level of like, because when you look at the macro level, then you can start to look at this the local issues, the things that you can actually change. Because I think what is hard now is and what's great is that we can see on a global picture of what the world looks like and how it's being affected.
Like
Um,
never before.
like never before. And I think that's
Yeah.
why I was at the downtown LA protest yesterday, and to see this kind of, and it was very peaceful, and obviously we've other things happen where, you know, there's a myriad of reasons like how it got to that place, so I mean,
Mm.
I don't want to jump to conclusions, but we kind of know, if you do your research and you kind of look into it as opposed to just listening to a talking head tell you exactly how to feel, you start to get a little more. When you get more information from different perspectives, you start to come to your own conclusion. But anyways, like yesterday was really just this energy that was there, just people there for a purpose of justice, and seeing the different faces, the different types of people, and the crazy part was also seeing people being supportive in different ways outside of just supporting the cause. They were there handing out waters, anyone needed masks,
Mm.
or anyone needed anything like some food. There are people there doing that, and it just felt this beauty sense of community that I felt like was that we kind of lost a little bit in America. You know, everyone's kind of, you know,
But
individualism
my question is, did we really lose it, or was it?
taken away.
I feel like it's just like we threw a huge white Ku Klux Klan sheet over it. You feel what I'm saying? So if you ever try to navigate under a sheet or under a blanket for it, it's kind of hard to navigate under it. You feel me? And Donald Trump is that blanket. Donald Trump and his racism is that blanket. Where but we can still navigate, we can still find each other under that sheet and that blanket for it, but it's a blanket of racism on top of the country right now that's being had. But I mean, Connect the Coast is a media company that I own. I started that because I believe that even in this area in Slow in the 805, there are more of us who think like myself and you than there are of people who think like Trump. I just think that their voices are a lot more amplified than ours because the system has set up to amplify their voices. They have the news outlets, they have all the businesses, they have all the politicians in their pocket. But I mean, me and you have been friends since the 80s. You feel what I'm saying? And we've been friends. I mean, we have the most diverse group of friends in that time period. That's kind of what we're known for. It's like one of every race in the 80s. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's
Yeah.
been like that on the coast forever. It's just that we have never had the power, and we've never had the megaphone in our hands to say our perspective. I do think that, and you know how many Latins there are on the coast. I think there are more of us than there are of them. I just think that we need tools to amplify our voices.
No, you're absolutely right. I think you know, you can throw statistics uh, all you want, but like then like what do you believe? Because who is putting those polls together? Who is putting those numbers together? Uh,
Hmm.
when you see it with your eyes and you know, the flesh, it really encourages you to 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 think like you're not alone. And I think a lot with a lot of movements, you know, which I think we're seeing something really big in the sense that a lot of people who would never, whether they're doing it for the trend reasons or whatnot, it's I think the one thing that really irks me is you know, as you know, I've been, whether it be just putting my head down and doing it or sometimes being more vocal on it, you know, the Asian American kind of male, as far as how they're portrayed in the media, is really important to me because you know, it's we've been looked at a way and portrayed a certain way that's just unpleasant, or at least like that
Yeah.
was a one aspect of how it was behind a white lens, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's important for all of us right now to take the time to learn about your history, because your own history, because especially in America, as far as America goes, and it always will connect in some way to anti-blackness,
Mm.
and that's the
Mm.
shit part of it
That's
all, right?
heavy. That's heavy.
Because there is a connection. You know, I speak to like my fellow Asian Americans. Some are fighting the good fight and being super supportive right now, which is important, and some are just indifferent and not seeing the importance of this, and not realizing if they immigrated here, whether their parents were born here, and how they even got to America, is off the backs of the work that the African Americans have done, whether it be through the civil rights movement, which is the biggest one, because if that didn't happen, your ass wouldn't have immigrated here, been able
Yeah, true.
to live here, or even to have the rights of of not be segregated. Because you know, at the before then, they were just, you were lumped together. You know, if you weren't white, you were black. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, that's a fact.
and it's the craziness of that. So it's like I urge a lot of people to do some critical thinking, because don't just listen to us. I mean, we're just having a conversation, but if it's something hits you, strikes you, do a little more research, read books, because we can't live in an age of just trusting everything that's on Twitter and Instagram.
Oh, that's yeah, especially now because I mean we have people like Zuckerberg saying that they're going to allow politicians to lie on their platforms, and we have I mean as much as Jack Dorsey, I mean he's the only one kind of checking the president. All he's doing is putting warnings under the tweets. So we're getting a lot of false information at a very high pace. So we do have to be wary of that and find out what's right on our own. But I also think that too, like I can't obviously speak for every black person, but I can speak. I feel like for a lot of black people, when we say that, like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to speak for myself. I'm not even going to try to speak for other black people. I'm speak for myself. That growing up, like I said, I didn't look at myself as like a black kid. I just looked at myself as a regular kid that wanted to be a rapper. But the reason not only, I mean, you were obviously a cool dude and we like the same things, but one of the reasons that I really gravitated towards you is because even as someone who wasn't taught to be proud of their blackness, I remember as late as the early 90s how Asians were portrayed in the media. You feel what I'm saying? Like Mr. Miyagi was the first respectable Asian character on in the media, and he still was very like on the line, like I don't know, like that's the white man's version of what an Asian should be. You know what I'm saying? And like it always really offended me the same way that like when I seen Bugs Bunny cartoons and you see black people with big lips and no nose and all that stuff, I'd be like, I would say Asians are the only people that maybe feel my pain because when I see them on these mediums that I love, television, and I hear them on the radio, they look nothing and sound nothing like the Asians that I actually know. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And same way as with the black people, they look nothing and sound like nothing like the black people that I actually know. So I always felt like you would understand where I'm coming from because people don't see us the way that we really are and the way that we want to be seen. So that and I feel like a lot of black people feel that way, and sometimes they don't express it well or they don't eloquently say it, but that is why a lot of black people gravitate towards kung fu movies, and that may be why a lot of Asians gravitate towards hip hop and dance. You feel what I'm saying? Because we see ourselves in these meetings. We see how beautiful we are when it's done right, and we love it when we like when you see hip hop and when you see choreography that's beautiful, you love it. And when we see martial arts movies and when we see your culture and we eat your food, we love it. You know what I'm saying? And we can see ourselves in that. But I don't think that it's been I've never heard somebody express it like that, and I've never really even thought about it to say it because we've never had this direct
Oh no,
conversation. But that's
yeah.
how I feel. You know what I'm saying?
I mean it's true how like for me when I first moved to America, TV was my first just education, I guess, on America. And I mean, I think I've said this before somewhere, but like, Uncle Phil was like my American dad,
Of course, of
Bel
course.
Air. I'm sure for a lot of people, but for me, you would think like, oh, Full House or something like that, which you kind of watch, but something about Uncle Phil teaching Will about discrimination. And then I remember seeing the episode where he got pulled over by a cop and sent to jail. And then when he came in and just struck that, I just like, it was ingrained in me of like, oh, damn, that is the black experience. I'm like, is that true? Because you didn't have YouTube. You didn't have like, if you read books, I didn't know anything about James Baldwin. I didn't know anything about other than MLK, what you learned in school.
Right.
And at the end of the day, like a lot of, whether it be immigrant kids or kids that kind of are when you're younger, you have other things to worry about, sometimes. And what's terrible, I'm thinking about that, is like the black experience, there's another layer added to it outside of the things that you worry about as like a kid or teenager, right? And there's an
Hmm.
extra layer of like, don't get killed. Like I never
Yeah.
thought about that. My parents like, don't get hurt, don't get in a car accident, like stuff that anybody can go through. But like getting stopped by the cops is something that I'm like, oh well, as long as I just give them my registration and license, and I'm more worried about getting a ticket and paying for it. How I'm going to explain it to my parents as opposed to dealing with possibly getting killed. That's
Yeah.
that's crazy to me. But like with hip hop culture, I had to do some like soul searching too, and this was a few years back when realizing like, I'm like, I'm a big fan of Bruce Lee. Obviously, I think a lot of people when we talk
Of
about
course,
Bruce
absolutely.
Lee was like one of the first Asian Americans that was able to come in and just exude confidence and who he
And cool, he
was.
was cool. He was the coolest.
He was cool, and he can kick your ass. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the real, right? And that is something that we're like, oh, he does not allow bullies to intimidate him,
right.
But for me, like hip hop was 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 something that was almost like a shield. It was this thing that I know a lot of the black community kind of talks about, like appropriating culture, like taking the culture. You only take it when it's convenient for you, and then
Hmm.
something bad happens to the community that you love so much or the culture you love so much, you're nowhere to be found. And I think
Right.
that's what's happening right now. It's like asking yourselves like, how much have I took from this culture and not and taken away something that is of value.
Hmm.
Obviously culture is supposed to be shared. You're supposed to share the beauties and arts and all that, but the idea that you are only seeing half of a person,
Yeah.
or a community, is what is wrong right now.
Hmm.
To not accept that there is this history of brutality and hate and anti, um, it's just seeing people as not human
Yeah.
is is crazy. But like the idea, how do you feel about the as far as like people who do take who are rappers and aren't not black and kind of don't know how to deal with how to support, even though they've basically uh, kind of use that
Well,
as an identity, right? Like without, I know
yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah. No, I don't. It depends. You feel what I'm saying? It really depends because, like, if you're a rapper who's not black who says "nigga this, nigga that, nigga this, nigga that," you better be the first one on the front lines. You feel what I'm saying? But rap now is just it's like sports. It's everybody's. It belongs to everybody. You know what I'm saying? So if maybe you respect black culture through your music or whatever, and you've spoken out that way, maybe right now I'm not going as hard if I don't hear you be as vocal, if I've seen you be vocal throughout the years. You feel what I'm saying? But if I can see that you look at rap as a lick, if you look at hip hop as like, oh, everybody's doing it, I could get a million views real quick, get a quick little bag in my pocket, and you've done that, like Lil Pump or whoever, Gucci Gang, and then when this happens, he's nowhere to be found. I'm looking at you kind of crazy. But I do want to, because there's a thought I had. You said something about not looking at people as humans. I really want to bring women into this conversation because I have this conversation with my wifey all the time, like about how people treat, like, when people are surprised that women do something well, or when people are surprised that they do something, say something smart. Men, I'm not even gonna say people. When men are surprised that people do something well, and when women say something well, do something well, or say something smart, then we're all surprised and like, she's cool. She said something I like. When you say things like that, even if it's about a black person, like, oh, you're cool for an Asian person, or you're cool for a black person, those things mean that you don't look at the person you're talking to as a whole human being. Because if you did, you wouldn't be impressed that they can do the same thing that you can do. You feel what I'm saying? And you wouldn't even be impressed that they can do something you can't do. So don't stop saying this person is my cool black friend, or they're cool for a black person, they're cool for an Asian person, or she's a chick but she's super cool, she likes football. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
of those things, like it can't just stop at like black lives. And I'm not up here trying to say all lives matter, or be one of those preachers, but what I am saying is that when you realize that you're not looking at one person as a human being, take that same lens and look at everybody else and see, do you
mm,
equate them as a human being as a whole? Because as a man, I see this all the
yeah,
time. I see men say crazy things to women, crazy, crazy things to women that like they would never say to a man. And I'm like, you don't look at that woman as a whole person, and you don't even realize it. You feel what I'm saying? And it's just it's nuts. So I feel like just all the way around, we have to have these conversations.
No, thank you for saying that. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I think for all of us to what's going to spawn from this outside of hopefully fixing them or at least putting it towards the right direction, because it's going to take a while. This does not happen overnight. And we've had this conversation in our group, our friends, that it can't happen overnight. But these conversations need to be had, because if someone takes away just one little thing from this, and I've taken away a lot of stuff, just even having this conversation. I've known you for, I don't know, for almost over 20 years.
Over 20 years, yeah.
20 years. But I remember I just discovered this. She's a educator on race, Jane Elliott.
Yeah, she's dope. She's super dope.
She's super dope, and I encourage anyone, if they want to learn more about just kind of systemic racism and just kind of how the system's been set up, not just even in America, and I think it applies to other countries as well. But right now, obviously, America's in the spotlight, and she was saying, like, try and realize what you say. If you do say, "I don't see color," when you look at someone, you're like, "I don't see color. I'm colorblind." I treat everyone the same. I don't care what color they are, which you should treat everyone the same, right? That's what we're all looking for right now. But at the same time, you can't say you're colorblind, because that means you're not accepting that other person as who they are. If the person is black, then that's who they are. Whether it is not the idea that's in your head of like what has been portrayed, or your one experience with one other black person, you have to accept them, because that's what they are. Like saying like, "Oh, you don't see me as Asian," is a different thing than saying like, "I know what type of Asian you are." That's like
right.
a thing, right?
Right.
There's so many layers to it that it's like when we have these conversations, sometimes not talking about us, but like in the public space, it all gets whittled down to like 30 seconds, and it's like, this is such a hard thing to talk about, because there's so many layers behind like who people are. But just because they are a skin color doesn't mean they're the way that you think they are.
Right. Absolutely.
People are surprised by certain things, like even for like, for instance, like for you, it's like saying like, "Oh, I'm from the Central Coast." It's like what? And it's like,
Yeah.
because people exist everywhere.
Exactly. I can't tell you how many times today at the protest I got asked where I'm from, when it says where I'm from on my shirt. Like, why would I be wearing a San Luis Obispo shirt and protesting in San Luis Obispo if I'm not from San Luis Obispo? Because there's no black people there. They instantly go to, "Oh, I've never seen you, so you can't be from here. I've never seen you before." So, like, what are we talking about? You know what I'm saying? But I think you hit something on the head, and it's something I want to expound on, and it's that, I think that people would like to claim that there's a culture war in this country and maybe across the world. But what I really think that there is a misunderstanding of the cultural hierarchy that exists in nature. And when I say that, I mean that we have the order of which cultures are most important backwards, right? So if we really did a hierarchy of which cultures were most important, and we put the culture of humanity at the top, then we would all see each other as people, right? And then we could put the culture. I personally believe the culture of gender should be second, and we should acknowledge the differences and celebrate the similarities. And once the culture of humanity is respected and the culture of gender is respected and understood, then the cultures of ethnicity and the cultures of hobby, hip hop, and all that stuff all can be secondary. And cultures of family, I think even maybe culture of the family could come third, and everything else can come after those three things. You know what I'm saying? So, species, gender, family, and then race. You go after that, and everything else. If you understand species at the top, then I can appreciate you as an Asian. I don't have to say I don't see you as an Asian. I can say I appreciate you as an Asian. I appreciate what you bring to humanity as an Asian, and you can appreciate what I bring to as a black person to humanity. You feel what I'm saying? Like, and I feel like if we understand, because nature is made to work. Everything works together, even the way a man and a woman fits together, the way that the sun affects the flowers. It is made to work. And there is a natural hierarchy of cultural importance that's just set in there. And if we acknowledge the importance of the culture of humanity first and everything else secondary, half of these problems would go away overnight.
Yeah, I mean, culture of humanity. I mean, that's beautiful, and you know, even going down, I know um, with gender and just being introduced with what um, different types that we haven't really even been exposed to and or even had a voice. But even like talking about race instead of saying who's better or what is better has been the big part that's been laid over the whole world. And I think it's a sense of pride, right? Just like a sports team. You're like, well, you know, I want to see my, you know, my team win. And it shouldn't be that
Right.
idea of like, you should be just proud of it so you can share all the things that you've experienced and learned from your particular culture with someone else's. And hopefully that exchange can happen for the greater good of humanity, right? Because I think
Exactly.
when we see people from different countries really come together and work, the advancement of like technology, for example, have we just surpassed what has been done in 50 years. What would have been done in 50 years if we kept separate, and we've done it in like less than 10 years. It's
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's really incredible with the shared information that we have. But I mean, like, this is wonderful to have because I think more people should have this conversation and listen and
Absolutely. I appreciate you opening your platform to do that, man. It's dope.
no, I think it's incredibly important because I know there's everyone has a lane and what they're. I think everyone's trying to figure out what they can do, right? What they can do to help. And I think we live in an age where they want the result now. They want to do it now. They want the result now. You know, they want to Amazon Prime it. They want the next day. You
Yeah.
know, the
Yeah.
next day. And you know, I think we've all most of us have kind of grew into that culture of like, well, yeah, I can get that thing now if I wanted to, and so it's immediate. So but these changes don't happen overnight, but the action that of consistency and with an open heart allows us to hopefully get there a little quicker than the previous generation um, uh, hasn't had the opportunity to fully be able to do kind of what we're doing. Like, look, you're in a different city and we're just having a conversation publicly.
Yeah. This is crazy.
Like this
It's crazy.
satellites. You would need professional cameras and before then, right?
Literally every day. Every day. I mean, like, I think about this every day of my life. Like, not to brag, guys, but we were very popular at other people's high schools when we were younger, and social media didn't exist. We had to actually like sneak onto other people's high schools or be invited onto their high schools to know people at other schools. So like every day I think about like where we would be at. Like we were on national TV as teenagers and there was no social media, whereas every teenager now who's on national TV is like immediately blows up. I thank God that social media didn't exist, and I'm at the same time wonder what would have happened. But it's just I say all that to say that we live in an unprecedented time with unbelievable tools at our disposal if we can just look at them as tools and not clout machines. You know what I'm saying? And use them as tools, we can quickly change the world, I think.
Hell yeah, man. Amen to that. And I I think also just to keep our focus to outside of these conversations are great. Should continue, I think, till we've solved the issue. You know, it's going to take some time, but like to see justice, you know, not just for George Floyd, but for the countless killings that have happened in the hands of policemen that aren't held accountable. I think is kind of what needs to start the first thing that kind of happens, and I think the world can easier.
For
Uh,
sure.
that when that is finally seen and done, so we can move on to others that are still playing our system and our specifically our country.
That's a fact. And I mean, like, this is not new, guys. Like, we have literally been friends since the 80s, you know what I'm saying? And if anybody caused harm to my brother or his family, I would lay my life on the line for him, and I know that he would do the same for me. And we need to start speaking up for each other's communities. Our families did businesses on very on near blocks to each other. So there's been a unity and a respect here that has existed. Um, I mean, during a time when people used to say that it didn't exist, you know what I'm saying? Like when we would go to LA and we would show up together with me, you, Lucas, or even if Jeremiah or Terrence were there and Tommy, they'd be like, "What the fuck is this? Like United Nation?" Like because people couldn't understand that like
And we
we
didn't do
all
that on
grew up
purpose.
together.
We didn't do that. We didn't be like, yo, I need a black friend, like I need a white friend. It wasn't even that. It just happened, and I'm really thankful that that happened because I got to learn so much. You know, it creates empathy, whether it's not just learning about the problems of you know of a different community, but it's just like that's kind of
Yeah,
how yeah, it's kind of how you should function. You should not to seek out that. It's just know that like how when differences happen. I mean, when you have people who have a common like, and that's what I loved about dance. And love about dance is that I remember the first time I was, you know, I was in a class and it was, you know, obviously it was like hip hop and freestyling was something I was really insecure about. And I just remember the first thing about, you know, the community was just it didn't matter what color you were. You're like, yo, you're
it's like
dope.
who's dope, who's not.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I have a quick story before we like get off. I don't want to take too much of your
No,
time.
no, all good, all good.
You know, going back to, and this is a longer conversation about like, you know, appropriation. You know, I used to have, you know, I used to have cornrows. I had
Hmm.
cornrows when I first moved to LA, and you know, the first time I did it was more of like, you know, our roommate Chuck was just he's Puerto Rican, half black, and he was just like, oh, I can braid your hair, and I was like, okay, you know, it was
Right,
just
right.
fun, and then it just started. I remember when I was on tour with Beyonce. I got the Beyonce tour. I wanted to take him out because I was like, I can't sustain this, and also I don't feel right being around like, you know,
That's crazy because I never honestly, again, during that period, I still, I guess, was asleep. I wasn't woke. So I never really even thought about you having corona. It never crossed my mind, bro. Like you were on BET, like.
well, it's funny because like I was like, I feel wrong. I don't feel right. Like having cornrows. I'm not. You know, not even at that age. I was kind of like, I didn't know if this was right. This doesn't feel right because I'm not. I didn't know what appropriation was. You know,
Mhm.
but I remember I asked like, oh, I'm gonna take it off, and like coming from the top, the boss was just like, no, keep it. Like we
But but
love it.
but appropriation for all those out there. Appropriation is people who don't indulge, like you don't know any black people, you don't kick it with no black people,
Give credit and
or
acknowledge.
give credit, and then you take the style. You weren't doing that, so it wasn't appropriating. You know what I'm saying? It definitely wasn't appropriating.
But you know, it still like makes me like, oh, what am you know? At the same time, like with any culture, when you start to get to know it, you're like,
Is
and
this me or not? Is this me?
is this me or not? And that's the hard part because you know a lot of people who grew up in the Bronx or whatever, and just that's what they
Yeah,
knew, and how they
yeah.
talk, and that's the culture that they're in. So it's a really hard conversation because other people see it differently than you. But at the end of the day, it's like you can explain it to someone, but they don't know your history or experience.
Because
Um,
I had that same thing. Like basically when I had the mohawk, when I painted my nails black, when I was only kicking it with rock stars, that was because the black people I thought when I moved to LA and tried to be a rapper in LA that black people would automatically accept me. You know what I'm saying? But they had their own struggles going on. They weren't really they weren't trying to stop what they was going through to teach me how to be black. You know what I'm saying? And instead of me taking it upon myself to learn what I wanted to know about being black, I just said, oh, well, y'all not fucking with me. I'm gonna go fuck with them. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I was painting my nails black. That's why I was only hanging with rockers. That's why I was only doing rock music and pop music for a time because I felt abandoned by my people. So I abandoned my people. You know what I'm saying? Like that's where that came from. I had to sit down and have a long look inside of myself. And I don't think I like all rock music. I like all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? But that was not me. It wasn't me because it just I only did that because they were the ones accepting me. But a lot of times, even in accepting me, they were making fun of me. It was racist in itself. They're just like, I can't believe a nigga's doing this. You know what I'm saying? And like I wasn't woke enough to see that's what was happening. So I mean I understand that self-discovery takes time. Understanding what your own thought process and how your mind works takes time. But if you're doing that, stay on the path, and keep digging into yourself, keep digging in and having those uncomfortable conversations with yourself because you will come out the other side as a better person.
Man, that's beautiful. I'll leave it at that. Have a lot of conversations with yourself so you can discover yourself, and that's huge. So yeah, man. Look, I really appreciate you getting on. I know it was very last minute, and you're a busy guy, and I think these are important conversations. So I love you, man. And
I love you too. Say what up to the family for me. Say what up to Lil Zia.
all right, thank you everyone for watching. I know it's late for some people in America. Uh, so,
Oh, let me just say this. I have a radio station 24 hours a day. It's on 24 hours a day. You can download the app. If you have an iPhone, it's a free app called Station Head, and it plays music from my city. I feature artists from my city every day, and I'm the DJ on there. You can request music. And right now we have our protest playlist going on 24 hours a day to keep the protesters inspired. But every day, 24 hours a day, you can listen to this. It's a great way to support Black business. It's a great way to support independent musicians. And check it out. So
what
Station Head is the app. It's free. And
station?
follow Station Head. Station Head. One word. It's a free app. And follow Connect the Coast on Station Head to listen to Connect the Coast Radio. And I thank
All
you
right,
for letting
send
me say
that
that.
to me when I put this live on. I'll throw it on there
For sure.
as well. So yeah, everyone go download the app and listen. Lorde Sanctus, he's really trying to bring the culture the Central Coast, and there's a lot of like great rappers, musicians out there that he's really you're spearheading. I mean, you're really jumpstarting kind of that movement, which
Trying, sir.
has existed but hasn't had the voice. So I appreciate
True.
you for that, and dude, much love to you, man, and have a good night.
Likewise, I love you, bro, and I really appreciate you having this conversation with your platform. It means everything. So it means everything.
Hell yeah, man. All right, have a good
Yeah.
night, dude.
You too, fam. Peace.